Welcome to Rauta's Underground Trio Reviews. Once again, we have 3 different albums of 3 different styles and 3 different countries, and according to my own opinion, I will list them from worst to best. Feel free to disagree, part of the deal here. First, I'll introduce you quickly, these in alphabetical order, and then I'll twist the order according to my own opinion. First, we'll go to Sweden with Grave Heresy, a new band from Sweden playing war metal or black death metal. 4 guys doing the style in a very, very classic fashion. Their first album, so not much information to give about it before that. Then we have something from Denmark, Horned Almighty, with their new album, and this is a band that has been out there for more than 20 years. Black metal. And last but not least, we have Svartelder from Norway, yet again a black metal group, this time the 3rd album, and this is somewhat of a super group, or at least all-star lineup. Now let's twist and shake and go to Sweden. Hey Podday from Sweden. This album is indeed the very, very first release by the band, virtually unknown act so far, so let's take a look at it. Now, this name might be as forgettable as a lot of these bands tend to do sometimes, unless or until they really make the name for themselves, and I think these guys will be doing that. Here is how the album looked like. Incineration Victory. Sounds like a badass to do. Play with fire and conquer everything. Alright, so what we are talking about here is, of course, black and death metal combined, or as the glorified term goes, war metal. Now, you can pretty much drop your names here and start listening to bands like Revenge and the like, and then you're roughly getting the vibe here. Yes, it's chaotic, yes, it's aggressive, yes, it's fast tempo, pretty much all the way through. No, there are some slower tempo parts, let's call them mid-tempo parts, to just give you a little bit of a breather here and there, but the rest of the time it's violent as fuck. Now, the downside of these things is, once you put some of these for a longer spin on your player, you start to get the feeling like, I'm not really remember anything but the aggression and the fast tempo and everything here. You sometimes get their skitter sledge, get the kind of a revenge feeling, and it's pretty cool. But I'll urge you, put, say, 5 random albums in your playlist, or more like, ask your friend to do it for you, and then start guessing which band is which one. And I'll say it's gonna be hard to, sometimes to really figure out which band goes to which direction and all that stuff. I mean, of course, when you're a fan, you really know all the details. You can probably do the cover songs and all. But just giving it like a random playing, I think this is not exactly the most memorable. That's not to say it goes without its merits. Like, for example, these guys have pretty good production. There's nothing I can bitch about the vocals and all that stuff. So they basically understand how to do this given style. But then again, I also would like to say there is hardly anything memorable as such with the given album. I mean, like I said, it's aggressive and chaotic and violent and all that stuff, but after a few spins, it all starts to just kind of become this one ball. You can really figure out like what are the best songs and so forth. Very, very potential band, but no cigar as of yet. Then we'll go to Norway with Svartelder Trenches, 3rd album by the very band. And this is curious, they started as early as around 2005, only to split up a little bit later. And they came back after a few years of being split up with a new lineup, and with this new lineup or current lineup, they have done 3 albums so far. And when I say it's kind of an all-star lineup, I really mean it. These guys are more known for other bands they have been taking part of, including but not limited to, say, Dödsvanger or Nordjävel, 1349, From the Vastland and all. Sorry for the light doing its trick, it's just basically burning through all these white colors and all that stuff, but it's just to give you a little bit of idea how the packaging looks like. Now, because of this all-star lineup thing, you cannot stop thinking that, okay, is this yet another side project for these guys who already have quite a few bands? The answer would be yes and no. Yes, in the sense, there are lots of parts where you feel like, does this really need its own band to be, being the band, when there are actually other bands, sometimes better than this one. Then again, of course, this is a little bit different from the bands I mentioned. this wouldn't, in my opinion, for example, challenge Nordjävel, even though I like Död Samurai vocalist, but I mean, Nordjävel is musically, in my opinion, clearly better. When you combine these two, compare these two from the Vastlands, you're gonna find, okay, it's different, but does it really challenge that bad? I guess yes and no once again. Will this challenge 1349 then? I would say this is probably even better. But even so, as much as there are good parts all along the albums, there are also lots of parts where you feel like maybe some leftover riffs seeped into this particular album. What is most annoying, however, is the outro part. First you have this many minutes of silence, nothing is happening, and you're taking a look at your CD like, is the album already done? And after these many minutes of silence, there's this outro track, which is the worst track on this album. In my opinion, it reminds me of so many of those 1990s albums when it was cool and fun to include those silent, muted tracks, only to make a end surprise. Or sometimes you would actually rewind the first track to so-called minus seconds to figure out some hidden track, intro, or whatever. That's the thing here. In my opinion, it's not really needed. This album would have been better if the outro was just cut off. Included some bonus track on Bandcamp or whatever, but here on the album it just feels useless. All in all, I would say Svartelder is somewhat of an interesting band. It's pretty good of an album, or why it wouldn't be here after Grave Heresy after all. But there are things which make me wonder, is this album really that much needed? If the best parts of this one was put into those major, the main bands of this given artist, maybe they would be even better. I don't know. But Svartelder might be a cool band in the future. Now it's a little bit in the middle. Not really like mediocrity, not at all, but isn't really great either. It's just pretty good of an album, and that's it. And then we have the last in the pile, Heresy Almighty. Horned Almighty from Denmark, and this is often overlooked band. I mean, Denmark has never been a really strong when it comes to black metal, even though there have been quite a few bands that have been making mark, including Denial of God. Now, Horned Almighty is not a new band. It's been said it's been here for over 20 years, but never made it that big. They have already quite a few albums, and their style of black metal is very classic from the 90s and all, even though this album is of course very much of 2024. Now, these guys have put out an album full of kind of a basic, classic, traditional 1990s inspired black metal, but with sound that is very much today. And I think it's a good thing, because this kind of a modern sound gives a little bit more power and all that feeling to this kind of album, which is so often a little bit overlooked, and for a reason when the production is not really supporting the music. With Horned Almighty, I think they're now taking the benefit of good sounds, and even those somewhat lukewarm riffs sound so much more powerful when it's properly produced. And as such, this is really the best of the pile for today's episode of Underground Trio. While there is no fundamentally anything mind-blowing with the given album and all, I would say there's something good happening. So while not it's the most memorable of all albums right here with the given style and all, this is something that kind of sparked my interest towards the bands again. Like, maybe I should actually revisit some of the older albums, because this is a good album after all. And like I said, while not anything out of ordinary, at least it's better than some weird ideas or experimental bands that don't always seem to know what the hell they are doing. So in my opinion, the best of the pile is Horned Almighty, but Grave Heresy and Svartelder right here, these two ones are still quite decent ones too. So all in all, no disappointment in this episode if you ask me, and links are provided in the description box, so listen to the ones you like, and I hope you like all of them, but of course sometimes that's just impossible. But let me know which ones are your favorites, or is there something you need to know about the bands? Maybe I can put you in the right direction. Now off you go, give them a listen and enjoy.